If I could ask everyone to please take a seat if you can find a seat. Members, if you would take your seats, if I could have the staff come to get in their positions. Today is August 1st. This is a hearing of the Ad Hoc Olympic Committee. I want to welcome everybody. And we have a lot of cards from the public today. So what I'm going to commit to is to try to hear as many of the cards as we can. We have this 2024/28 committee here with us today, so that we'll be in a position to ask questions. Members, I just want to say that 2 years ago, I think people felt that us competing was just an exercise. Now we're on the verge of actually crossing the finish line if we choose to do so. Regardless of what happens, I think that we need to compliment Casey Wasserman, the mayor, Gene Sykes, and the Olympic team. But I also think us as members of the city council, we should be unbelievably proud of the city attorney's office led by Big Jim, Sharon So with the CLA's office, Miguel and now Rich from the CAO's office, because they did a lot of work. And I just want to say to the members, regardless of what happens, this bid is better because of you. This bid is better because of the questions. This bid is better because of the questions that you've asked. Okay, now, we're not going to have booze. We're going to have a conversation, and if things don't go the way that you want, I still anticipate that you will act with a certain degree of class. So, with that said, let me just quickly lay out the process. We're meeting today, members, so that we can hear where we are. It will give this committee and our other colleagues at least a week to ask questions, to make changes. It is, if all goes well, we as a committee will meet next Friday, and hopefully at that time we'll be able to make a recommendation to the rest of the body. Now, the documentation has to be submitted by the 18th. The reason why we will try to do this by next week, if we do it, is just in case when we discover that we forgot something or some of the data that we received was inaccurate, that will give us a few days to correct it. I don't think it's wise for us to wait to the 18th to make those decisions. If we could do it by next Friday, again, we have a cushion. So with that said, I think we'll start off with some of the comments from the public, maybe about 5 cards or something like that. We'll do a minute each. Then I'm going to ask the staff to come forward and give us their presentation. And I do want to say, again, our meetings are open. Everybody that's here, you're welcome. Let's be respectful of each other, and let's not, distractions or disturbances will not be tolerated. So that's your official warning. If you do that, you will be asked to leave. So let's start off with John Neighbor, Janet Evans, Candace Cable, and Egerton Forston.
Mr. Chair. Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Would you like me to read the item into the record?
I really don't, but I guess we have to I guess we have to officially do that. So, John, before you start, go ahead.
Item number 1 is 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games, United States Olympic Committee Memorandum of Understanding, and 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games Host City Contract. There will be a chief legislative analyst and city administrative officer report that has been circulated and distributed. And there is also a copy available for the public, and presentation by LA 28 on hosting the 2028 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games.
John, good to see you again.
Thank you very much. As an Olympic swimmer, I trained 4 hours a day covering 10 miles of black tile line on the bottom of the pool. Michael Phelps may well have swum the equivalents of twice around the planet's equator. In order to scale the diving boards, Greg Louganis had to climb the equivalent of once up the Empire State Building every day. And volleyball superstar Karch Karai hopped the same distance in workouts. Rowers often consume 12,000 calories a day in order to maintain their weight, in order to keep at training. Without exception, each of these athletes was weaker at the end of the day than they were when their day began. The magic occurs overnight as the body recovers, and the measure of their success is only seen over the long haul. If Olympians and Paralympians understand anything, we understand the need to embrace the idea of delayed gratification. In order to take 5 steps forward, sometimes it's necessary to take 3 steps backward. The recent news that Los Angeles is prepared to concede the 2024 Games to Paris may sound unfortunate to some, and as tempting as it is to feel a sense of loss by not hosting those games, I believe that's a case of misplaced pride. It matters less to an Olympian if he wins gold at the next Olympics or the Games 4 years later. What matters is that he or she prove himself to be the greatest of all time. It's no coincidence that in sports covered by a panel of judges, the undeniable advantage is to going last in the order. So here's how I see it. The people of Los Angeles have always been eager to put on the best games of all time. We succeeded in 1932 in the midst of the Great Depression when we ran a profitable event and originated the idea of the Athletes' Village. We did it again in 1984 when we reinvented the game's financial model, leading to a rebirth of the Olympic movement, and we created the LA 84 Foundation, the most successful legacy of any games. And now we have the chance to do it again. Which would we prefer? The IOC could have said, Los Angeles, you get to put on the best games you can 7 years from now.
You got to close it, John.
All right. My point is that this is the chance for us to behave like Olympians, to gird ourselves for the long haul and produce the greatest games ever. Los Angeles will finish second to none.
Thank you. Hello there.
Good morning. Good morning, council members. We are honored to be here today on behalf of the Los Angeles Olympic and Paralympic Bid Committee. I was 12 years old when I sat in the Coliseum in 1984, and even though I was a little girl with a funny little swimming stroke, I decided after watching those Olympic opening ceremonies that I wanted to be an Olympian and represent my country. And I had the great honor to do that in 3 Olympics. But I will say that the greatest part about being an Olympic champion is sharing with other people. The medals are great, but I love to share my experience, as do all these Olympians and Paralympians here today. In bringing the Olympic and Paralympic Games back to the city of Los Angeles, we will inspire not only people our age, but a whole new generation of young people. We will showcase our city. We will show them that dreams can come true. And those kids might grow up to be athletes or swimmers or gymnasts, but they might grow up to be scientists or educators or anything they dream of being. But the Olympics prove to all of us that we can do and be anything that we want to be. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Janet, and thank you for all that you've done during this effort. Candace, good to see you.
Good morning, my
Morning.
city council. Thank you for hearing us. I'm Candace Cable. I'm a 9-time Paralympian, a 3-time Olympian, and I've attended 4 games, either working for the games, covering the games, or learning how to put the games on. And I grew up here in Los Angeles not wanting to be an athlete. And that came true after my spinal cord injury. And one of the things I want to share with you is, and why I think that we should hold these games in 2028, is that there is an opportunity to create a social impact with these games, with both the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And the impact comes from the experience. And one of the greatest experiences I had during my athletic career was during the Nagano Games in Japan in 1998, because in the Athletes Village, they had an opportunity for the athletes to experience the culture. Every single day, I learned about flower arranging, and I had the opportunity to take that away with me. And I would like to have us be able to do that and show the people of the world the experience and the culture in Los Angeles. And I think we can do that during these games. So please, I hope that you consider a yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Starr, and I was in the 84 and 88 Olympic Games, and I was 10 years old when I learned about the games coming to Los Angeles. And I remember the day that I learned was the day I knew how to dream. And as a child growing up and having that ability, something inside of you that helps you grow as a person and an individual, to go from being a child to a young adult to carrying that same dream with me today, that's because of the city of Los Angeles. I didn't get that from Seoul. I got that from competing and knowing that LA was in front of me. And the diversity that the city brings and the community and bringing the community together, Los Angeles has that. And I was a proud Olympian. I am a proud Olympian today. And when someone asks me if I'm an Olympian, the first thing I say is I was in the Los Angeles Olympic Games. And there's something about this city, and I followed the sun, and I'm still here. So I hope you'll consider and keep us here. Thanks.
Egerton, my countryman.
Good morning, City Council members. My name is Egerton Foster, and I was the heavyweight boxer in the 84 Olympics, and I was the captain of the Olympic team representing Sierra Leone. I was blessed back then to have met the former mayor, Tom Bradley, that introduced me to my mother-in-law, Sweet Alice, ended up marrying my wife. I went home, and I came back because the L84 introduced me to Los Angeles. And I've been back carrying that Olympic spirit, working in the community, starting a business right here in Los Angeles. And I've been following this sun ever since. But yet, I've always been an ambassador within the Watt community and within the LA community to express to the young children the experience of being an Olympian. So I believe by bringing the Olympics back to Los Angeles, we'll have an opportunity for the next generation to enjoy and follow the sun. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me get Garrett Kluth, Renata Simro, and Mike Shea. And then Rafael Acosta.
Good morning, Council President, honorable members of the Ad Hoc Committee, and the general public. Renata Simro, President and CEO of the LA84 Foundation. Each Olympic Games has been transformative to the city of Los Angeles, and none more transformative than the 1984 Olympic Games. The 84 Foundation was established with a surplus, portion of that surplus from those games, about $93 million. And over the course of 33 years, having invested those dollars in the market, we've grown that endowment to about $160 million, averaging about 8% annualized returns, all while investing $230 million back into the Southern California community, about $70 million of that right here in the city of Los Angeles, impacting over 1.4 million young people that are represented here in the first couple of rows. And I think it's important to note that when the organizers of those games and the city council voted to bring those games to Los Angeles in 1984, there was no guarantee that there would be a surplus. And I think the benefits that continue to engender to the youth and to the communities that need them most through the efforts of my board of directors and the staff and the Anita DeFrance, who led the organization for 28 years, I should say, is really an indication of how we can play that legacy forward. And the work that the mayor and Casey and Jean and the bid team has done to acquiesce 24 for 28 and bring dollars today to continue to impact the youth who need these dollars most, to me is an indication that the 28 games will be successful, and we certainly urge your support. And if I can indulge you for just one moment, I know we don't have time for everyone to speak, but we did ask some of those community members and organizations who have benefited millions of young people to come and show support, and I'd just like to ask them to stand up so that you can see the representative of the communities that we've served over the last 33 years and will continue to do so leading up to and after the games.
Thank you, Renata.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Please come forward, identify yourself.
So my name is Mike Shea. I'm actually here this morning just to support this movement, the Olympic and Paralympic movement that's been a great part of my life for many years. I competed in 2014 in Sochi and was lucky enough to bring home a silver medal for my country.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. That opportunity for me was life-changing. After my accident in 2002, I never thought that I'd be competing. And to be able to stand on the world stage in front of everybody and compete for my country was great. But to have the games come back to my hometown of Los Angeles, I won't be competing then, but many athletes will be appreciating that opportunity because not only do they get to compete, but they have their friends and family who are locally here who can come support them, and that's not a very common thing. So to have that here in Los Angeles would be amazing, but it would also inspire so many young athletes in schools. It would also raise awareness for disabilities, and I think that that's just a great thing for the city of Los Angeles, and I am really, really looking forward to being a part of that.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And I'll be looking again for Rafael Acosta, Raida Owen, or is it Owens, and Jeff Williams. Yes.
Rafael Acosta, LAUSD's Beyond the Bell branch. Since 2008, Beyond the Bell has been the beneficiary of a transformational investment on behalf of the L84 Foundation to provide access to free organized sports directly after school, Monday through Friday, at all LAUSD middle schools for free. Since then, over 100,000 middle school students have been provided direct services in the form of coaching, training, skill development, but life lessons that are carrying them forward in their pathway throughout life. Of note, the Olympic spirit is alive and well, specifically in our female athletes that are being introduced to sports at the 6th grade level, 7th grade level, 8th grade level, sports that they may not be able to afford to compete in. But a lot of them are moving on and playing at the high school level as well, and building great relationships with their coaches and their friends. 163% increase in female participation since 2008 as a result of this investment. In addition, these life-changing opportunities, they honor the success of the Olympic Games and carry that spirit of those games that I was 3 years old. I didn't get to go. But our kids right now, they will be adults when they come back, and they will benefit tremendously from seeing those games on stage in our great city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good morning. Come on.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Raida Owen. I competed for the U.S. in the Sydney 2000 Games as a swimmer, and I've been a resident of Los Angeles for 14 years now. I also work with kids, many of them being underprivileged kids, and I think that being able to attend an Olympic Games is not just as an athlete, but as a spectator, is a really hard thing to do. So for it to come to Los Angeles, these kids and even adults can see the amazing spirit behind the Olympic Games, and I just think it would be an amazing opportunity for this city. I've been to the Games both as a athlete and as a spectator. I went to the London 2012 Games just to watch and kind of, be in the spirit of it without having to have the stresses of competition. And I think LA would do it amazing. This is such a great city. I'm proud to be a resident, and I'm very proud to help bring it here, so I hope you will consider it. Thank you. Time.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning to the council, LAPD, which I see is in strong representation here today. My dad, LA County Deputy Sheriff, so don't take no offense to what I say. Born and bred here in Los Angeles, went to Washington High, LA City College, then USC, then transferred, went to Texas. Don't hate me, but I had to get that education. I became an Olympian kind of a backwards way, different than the rest of my compadres out here and stuff. I got into it for a little bit different reasons, but once I got there, I saw the joy, I saw the majesty, I saw the pride, I saw everything, and then I understood what LA 84 was all about. I understood what the LA 84 Olympics was all about. I was a kid then. I wasn't really part of it. I was doing other things and stuff. Nothing illegal, that is. I was just doing other things. You know, as an Olympian in the 92, 96 games, you know, standing up there, racing against Michael Johnson, you guys all saw it. We got to bring something to the people of Atlanta, to have America here representing ourselves on our home turf. And LA can do that again. LA is the place. We have the infrastructure, we have the people, we have the talent, we have you guys here today. Come on, give us the yes, make this happen, and we'll show the world once again that LA leads the world.
Thank you. Melanie Bischoff, Eloy Ortiz, Karen Mack, Pablo Garcia Hernandez, please come forward.
Good morning, members of the City Council. My name is Eloy Ortiz Oakley, and I have the privilege of being the Chancellor of the California Community Colleges and representing more than nearly 2.2 million students in California. We are honored and excited to support this bid to bring the Olympics to Los Angeles. On behalf of the more than 20 community colleges just in the LA County area, we're here to commit ourselves to support this effort, to commit our facilities, to commit the excitement of our students, in particular our student athletes, to make this a successful bid. So I'm here to ensure that you can count on us, count on our support to make this a sustainable effort and to make this the greatest Olympics that the world has ever seen. So thank you. And on behalf of all of us in the community colleges, we look forward to supporting you.
Thank you. And from the United Way, Johannes Messere. Yes, please come in. Johannes, if you're here, get in the line.
Good morning. My name is Pablo Garcia Hernandez. I am the executive director of a nonprofit up in the Northeast San Fernando Valley called the Youth Speak Collective. And I'm here to lend my voice to the gratitude in this room for the legacy made possible by the 1984 Olympics. Through this amazing resource, areas like the Northeast San Fernando Valley have had access to high-quality organized sports, but more importantly, mentoring through coaching. Young people, young athletes are not the ones at the front of the class very often. So programs like ours and other programs that are supported by this resource have visions of the future through the coaches, many of whom are students in college, athletes working on their own careers and on pathways of their own. Our Club Futbolito program has operated in this group of communities, which is Sun Valley, Pacoima, San Fernando, and Sylmar, for over 5 years. And we serve about 100 or more students every year. Thank you, and I just want to lend my support.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Wesson and members of the Los Angeles City Council Ad Hoc Olympic Committee.
Good to see you again.
My name is Johannes Master, and I'm with United Way of Greater Los Angeles, where our mission is to end homelessness and poverty through quality education, housing, and jobs. The return of the Olympics to Los Angeles in 2028 is very much aligned with what we at United Way stand for, because real and sustaining change requires more than money. The net impact of the 2028 Games goes beyond improved youth sports and health. The shared vision of hosting the Olympics, hosting the world, provides our Los Angeles with a much-needed optimistic outlook, which enables us to better tackle the big problems, the ones that require leaders across sectors to unite and design groundbreaking solutions to ensure better lives for all Angelinos. Today, you are presented with a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring together our community, and I ask each of you for your commitment to support our winning bid for LA 28.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council
Morning.
President and esteemed council members. I'm Karen Mack, Executive Director of LA Commons, and we work in neighborhoods around Los Angeles to use art and culture to empower community members, and particularly young people, in getting involved in the civic process. Right now, we're engaged at Expo Center in a project where young people are painting portraits of Olympians, past, present, and future. And the thing that has stood out for me is how inspired these young people have been inspired to excellence by their exposure to the stories of the Olympians and actually getting to meet some of these Olympians. And I think this is the opportunity with these Olympic Games. We're talking about Expo Center in South LA, where young people are challenged often to see themselves as part of the larger community. And so with these games, we have the opportunity to bring them into the process, to bring youth from all over Los Angeles into the process to make themselves, their neighborhoods, and Los Angeles the best it can be as we welcome the 2028 Games. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I want Ann Ocher here, or Ann from No on the Olympics, Jed Perriott, Alex Saria, please come forward. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak and share our concerns with you. It's been very inspiring to hear all
Your
of
name, please.
Oh, my name is Ann Orchier, and I'm with No Olympics LA. And it's been very inspiring to hear all of these former Olympic athletes and Paralympic athletes and recipients of grants talk about what the Olympics have brought into their lives and what sport has brought into their lives. And we don't doubt that that's true. But at the same time, we just want to bring to all of your attention that you don't just represent Olympic athletes as our city council members. You represent all of us. And the Olympics have the power to shape our city in ways, especially over an 11-year time period, that are unpredictable and that can have really negative impacts on a lot of our most marginalized communities. And we ask you to really consider the impact of signing this contract and moving this contract forward on all of us, and that you listen to public feedback and public concerns outside of the people who already support the Olympics. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Please come forward. Identify yourself.
Hi there, Jed Perriott. Thank you. I'm also with No Olympics. I would just hope that you guys would get a little more community input before committing to this contract, do a little more outreach. There are a lot of concerns from a lot of different people in Los Angeles. And history shows, we have this document here we've provided, that the cities that host the Olympics see an increase in rent and an increase in homelessness. This does not positively impact a lot of communities. The Olympics actually harms a lot of low-income and working-class people. What you saw in the '84 games, this was the start of the LAPD becoming the most militarized police force in the nation, with sweeps, thousands of people detained and imprisoned without due process. Department of Homeland Security takes over the LAPD. We know that for the Olympic Games. There's a reason that Rocky Anderson, the mayor of Salt Lake City, is suing the NSA over this. Councilman Wesson, I was in your district last night for a town hall meeting. There's a lot of people in your district concerned about displacement. I'm not sure how the Olympics are going to help them. I would love it if you could have been there to hear their concerns. I'm not sure youth sports is the answer there, as you guys tend to give as the big positive for South LA. People need housing. People need their communities to stay together. And unfortunately, the Olympics have historically shown that they displace people in the cities that host them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Yes, identify yourself.
My name is Alex Cirillo. I'm with the No Olympics Coalition. I know there's been a lot of talk of the benefits and all the aspirational goals that the Olympics purportedly provide youth and citizens and residents of the city. But what good do all these benefits do when you fear deportation, as declaring the Olympics a national special security event would do, bringing Department of Homeland Security to control our local law enforcement officials. What good would it do when it leads to the displacement of people? We already have one of the lowest vacancy rates. And as a recent, rather egregious report published by Zillow points, that a 5% increase in rent will displace another 2,000 people. As it is, it's already projected to increase by at least 4%. So what good do these things do when you lack housing and you lack security for the most vulnerable of our residents? We ask you that you please consider delaying granting the mayor the ability to write the host city contract for longer than the week that the IOC is imposing on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so again, it's Melanie Bischoff, Emmanuel Visoso. Is it a Clayton Fretch? Please come forward. Identify yourself. You are?
Good morning. My name is Melanie Bischoff, and I work with the Southern California Tennis Association. Thanks for having me this morning. I work with the National Junior Tennis and Learning Program, which is an offshoot of a tennis program that Arthur Ashe started years ago. He believed that youngsters, particularly in the inner city area, should have the opportunity to play tennis, and so that's exactly what we're doing. The program in Southern California has existed for 40 years, and for 32 years we've been very fortunate to work with the LA84 Foundation. We've benefited from partnering with them. We provide 150 sites in the summer in the inner city areas at local parks, and I spend most of the time in parks. I don't ever step foot at a club, and I'm always working with kids in Southern California. We have, as I mentioned, 150 sites year-round. 150 sites in the summer and 53 sites year-round. We are pleased about the idea of the Olympic Games. The Games will excite more kids to participate in sports, and funding they generate will help future generations to play tennis and other sports. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please. Yes, sir.
Hola, mi nombre es Emmanuel Visoso y soy voluntario de la candidatura de Los Ángeles. El motivo es porque quiero dar algo de lo que ha dado esta ciudad.
Where's the one second. Okay, so let's restart his time, and we appreciate you. Our translator doesn't get in till 10, so we'll make sure that next week that does not occur. Go ahead, sir.
Hola, mi nombre es Emmanuel Visoso y soy voluntario de la candidatura de Los Ángeles. Mi motivo es porque quiero darle algo a la ciudad de lo que la ciudad me ha dado a mí.
Good morning. My name is Andres Risoso, and I'm here to speak before you about the Olympic vid. And I want to give something back to the city that has given me so much.
Quisiera que Los Ángeles 2028 fuera una realidad, ya que así el mundo conocerá esta ciudad, una ciudad multicultural, su gente, su clima y sobre todo lo que podemos aportar en el futuro al movimiento.
I would like to see the 2028 bid become a reality. This city has given me so much, and I would like the world to see what the city can do.
Y quisiera que Los Ángeles 2028 vengan para que todo el mundo conozca la gente que vivimos aquí en Los Ángeles. Gracias.
And I would like the 2028 bid to occur so the world can see the wonderful people of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Now, thank you, sir. Thank you, David. Yes, sir.
Good morning, City Council. Thanks for having me. My name's Clayton Freck, and I'm the founder and CEO of Angel City Sports. We provide sports programming for kids, veterans, and adults with physical disabilities right here in the City of Angels. But more importantly, I'm the parent of a 12-year-old that was born with a disability. He was born missing part of his lower left leg and also with only one finger on his hand. And this kid just happens to be an incredible athlete. He's already training for Tokyo 2020 and beyond. And I just want you guys to know that children with disabilities have no idea that sports exist for them. They do not know about the Paralympic Games, which hopefully you will vote to bring to Los Angeles.
Hold your time. Mr. Herman, sit down. Respect this man while he's speaking. You know, one more disturbance like that, I will ask you to leave. That is like so disrespectful and mean and hateful. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I just want you guys to know that children don't know the Paralympic sports exist. They really don't know that they could be athletes. So by bringing the Paralympic Games to Los Angeles in 2028, I think we have an amazing opportunity to raise awareness, let them know that being disabled is okay, and let them dream dreams just like every other kid.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to take a break from the public comment so that the committee can hear the report. So I think we should ask Casey to come forward, and Casey, you will bring your team. Hey, I'm telling you, we're not going to do that. If people are against the Olympics, you come up here, you speak, we listen, nobody interrupts or boos. We're not having that here. Okay? So do we want the city folk to come up as well, Sharon and Jim from city attorneys, or Jim, why don't you come up here with us? At least. And Jim, it's good to see you. Rich, good to see you. Okay, so again, I said it earlier, masterful, regardless what happens, masterful job, Casey. You should be commended for it. You put together a great team, and the only commitment that I need from you now is to ensure that your team will be available to answer questions throughout the week if members of this council and members of this committee have questions.
You have that commitment, sir.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President Wesson and members of the committee. We're very proud that the council has unanimously voted to approve our bid and authorize the city signing of the host city contract for the 2024 games. Since then, we've had three major events since February. First was the IOC Evaluation Commission visit in May, and they published their report in July. This 14-person commission visited every single venue in Los Angeles, as well as the Olympic Village at UCLA. And the commission chair called our plan mind-blowing, and the report said our inventory of high-quality venues exceeds games needs. And in reviewing our budget, the report said the detailed and conservative budget reflects operational plans and leaves room for cost savings. The report also said that the U.S. market for sponsorship, tickets, and licensed merchandise provides considerable opportunity to exceed budget revenues. Next, we had our Ioc Technical Presentation, followed by our Ioc session in Lausanne, Switzerland. The 45-minute presentation and 30-minute Q&A was with all members of the Ioc. The Evaluation Commission also gave its own presentation to the members. And the Ioc members at that session voted unanimously to award both the 24 and 20 games in what they described as a win-win-win situation. We have always been open to 2028 because we have nothing to build. We can host, as the mayor likes to say, in 2 months or in 2 decades. And in fact, Ioc President Thomas Bach said, in fact, it is the stronger bid who can wait to 2028. We had 2 goals for our negotiation pursuant to that conversation with the Ioc. One, we wanted to be able to provide financing and pay for the additional 4 years of operations. And we wanted to be able to invest in the legacy of the games today as opposed to waiting till the conclusion of the games. The new host city contract achieves these goals The deal was already good for LA, and the deal got better. There's an IOC contribution of $2 billion for 2028 instead of $1.7 billion for 2024. They've agreed to waive certain payments and royalties, saving tens of millions of dollars. We have an incremental 2 years of the commercial program to sell sponsorships and other commercial rights. The OCOG will now retain the IOC share of surplus, resulting in 80% of any surplus being kept by the City of Los Angeles and the OCOG for the benefit of sport and youth in the host city and the host country. The IOC Evaluation Commission also noted a number of significant cost-saving opportunities in the LA24 plan that will be realized in the 2028 LA Games plan. They also have agreed to advance $180 million to support the additional years of operating. And we, as an organizing committee, have agreed to provide up to $160 million to support city youth sports programs before the games begin. As I said before, the deal was already good, and we've made it even better. We've guaranteed a win when only one other American city has competed for the Summer Games in the last 100 years and won. And we are going to bring the games back to LA with your help. We'll continue LA's tradition of running the games in an inclusive and fiscally responsible way that promises to leave a lasting legacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. It's an honor to be here again with the committee, and I have enjoyed meeting all of you individually and speaking with your staffs over the past several weeks. We've had a close and productive working relationship with the city for more than 2 years. We're very pleased to have had the opportunity to meet individually with every member of the City Council, many, many times with several of them. We've had a 6-month budget workshop and a KPMG review of the budget that we prepared for the 2024 plan. KPMG said that the budget was substantially reasonable, complete, and adhered to a bottoms-up conservative approach. Then the California legislative analyst said Los Angeles' low-risk bid is a role model for future host cities. We participated in more than 30 public meetings to receive community input and feedback. We participated in at least one community meeting in every council district in the city. We've attended 9 city council ad hoc committee meetings of this committee. We've also attended 4 LA City Commission meetings, 2 for the Rec and Parks, 1 for the Convention Center, and 1 for the Disability Commission. We've had 3 state legislative committee hearings. We've had 2 Facebook Live Q&A sessions. And we've had many civic events throughout Southern California, including 2 Ciclavias, LA Pride, the Rose Parade, the Kingdom Day Parade, the Golden Dragon Parade, the LA Times Book Festival, the LA Hacks Hackathon, and we participated in and played a very substantial role in 2 Olympic Day celebrations. Even though the Olympic and Paralympic Games are years away, we've already signed up more than 12,000 volunteers who have committed to perform community service today throughout LA. Last Saturday, our volunteers sorted produce at the LA Regional Food Bank. We've also volunteered with Heal the Bay, Friends of the LA River, in cleanups in the Valley and in Long Beach, Special Olympics, United Way Food Drive, the Angel City Games, the LA Marathon and U.S. Olympic Trial Marathon, and the U.S. Paralympic Track and Field Championships. 2 Fridays ago, the LA 84 Foundation and LA 2028 hosted more than 500 young Angelinos at the California Endowment to ask them how an Olympic legacy can benefit the next generation. We also had an LA 84 volunteer reunion last Friday at the Coliseum. We've consistently found widespread public support for hosting the Games. A February 2016 Loyola Marymount poll found 88% support for LA 2024. A February 2017 poll that the IOC ran found 78% support for 2024 and only 8% opposition. Loyola Marymount just finished this week a new poll that asked about support for 2028 and found 83% support for 2028. The support is even higher among people of color. 85% of African Americans, 85% of Latinos, 85% of Asians support LA 2028. The Olympics uniquely attract support from across the political spectrum. 85% of liberals support, 84% of conservatives support the Games. 85% of LA renters and 82% of homeowners support the games. 70% of Angelenos say they will attend some of the events in person, and 44% of Angelenos have expressed interest in volunteering during the games. I might underscore, we expect tens of thousands of volunteers for the games. There were 34,000 volunteers for LA 84. Let me speak briefly about the Memorandum of Understanding and the risk protection for the city. We're very close to completing a new Memorandum of Understanding between the city, LA 2028, and the U.S. Olympic Committee. The new MOU has additional terms and conditions that provide the city additional protections and oversight responsibilities to account for LA hosting the games in 2028 as opposed to 2024. We make a new commitment to place a host city contract 2028 insurance policy no later than September 14th, 2017. We increased the allocated contingency from $250 to $270 million to reflect inflation between 24 and 28. And we begin to fund that allocated contingency earlier than previously planned. We add a provision that KPMG will review the 2028 Games budget at our cost. We've proposed meeting with the Council at least once a quarter in the first 3 years of the OCOG's existence. Let me speak briefly about state legislation. As you know, we want to secure new state legislation to support the 2028 Games, just as the state supported the 2024 Games. It's too late in the legislative cycle to attempt to get new legislation drafted and passed in the current session, which is ending this month. But we're committed to working with our state legislative leaders over the next legislative session. In preparation for this effort, we've already reached out directly to the governor's office, the Senate Pro Tem, and the Assembly Speaker, have had direct discussions with them to request that they support substantially similar legislation in support of a 2028 Games during the next legislative term. Thank you very much.
So if, I don't know if Rich or Sharon, whoever wants to kick it off from the city side. Everybody shift.
Thank you. Good morning. Sharon So with the CLA's office. With me is Rich Llewellyn, Jim Clark from City Attorney, Rich Llewellyn, CAO. The item before you also includes a CAO CLA report. Apologize for the lateness of the filing since the host city contract was only released on Monday. Basically what our CAO CLA report outlines is the Ioc timeline as it relates to when certain actions would be necessary if the council were to move forward on the opportunity to host the 2028 Games. Most significant is that August 18 deadline in which council would need to take certain actions if you decide to move forward with this opportunity. The report also outlines some of the city actions that would be required if the council were to move forward. These include endorsing withdrawal from the 2024 Games candidacy, as well as approving a new MOU and other guarantees which the council had previously approved in relation to the 2024 Games. The report also raises some issues for consideration by the council. Additional 4 years of wait does create additional uncertainty. In addition, there is not going to be an opportunity for a budget validation, which we did do in 2020 for the 2024 Games. And as indicated by Jean with regard to the state $250 million financial backstop, there will not be any opportunity to get any certainty on that before that August 18 deadline. So those are of concern. In addition, the MOU is still in process, as well as this tripartite agreement requested by the International Olympic Committee. That is in process. Those two documents we do anticipate transmitting to you within the next week. There is also a discussion on the host city contract. We were somewhat pleased when we did see the host city contract. There are some additional benefits that are provided to the city that were not included for 2028. Most significantly was the additional revenues of about $270 million. There is also an identified cost savings of about $67 million, and also some in-kind services of $30 million. And also, too, the IOC's willingness to waive their surplus percentage, as previously indicated. The IOC was entitled to a 20% of any surplus that would be generated. So that has been waived, and also the IOC's willingness to provide that advance funding to support the OCOG for the additional 4 years of operation, and providing additional funding for the youth sports program, which typically would not have been provided until after the Olympic Games. Similar to the 1984 Olympics, there was no funding for those sports programs until after completion of the Games. Our report also identifies some of the pending issues, as just mentioned. If the council were to decide to move forward, we would ask that you direct us to report back with the MOU, as a new MOU, as well as the tripartite agreement, and as well as actions related to guarantees and other directions that would be necessary if the council were to move forward.
Did you want to add, City Attorney's Office? Jim, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, I think a couple of things that Sharon said I'll just emphasize. One, this host city contract and the MOU, which is almost complete. It's not quite there yet. Sharon's right about that. Both are stronger legally in the view of our office than the prior host city contract and MOU from the city's perspective. Now, from a legal perspective, it's always difficult when there are unknowns to predict exactly what's going to happen. And as Sharon pointed out, there's substantial unknowns. For example, what's the state going to do? I think it's likely that they'll pass the legislation. Again, a number of you were in the state legislature. You probably have a better idea than I do. We haven't seen the budget yet, but we worked very closely in that last time. KPMG, which validated it for us, for the city, is going to be involved again at LA 28's expense now. So that's another. The operating agreement isn't quite done yet. So there is some risk. Having said that, I reported this council before with Miguel Santana on a couple of the sidewalk program, for example. That's a 30-year program. There's some uncertainties there. The settlement of the housing, ADA housing claim was the 10-year, $200 million settlement. So the council has to sometimes take some risk. From my view, and this is essentially not a lawyer call, but I would advise any client the risk in this deal is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. And again, Richard, good. Okay, has any, and I'm going to turn it over to the members and to those of you that are here from the public. When we finish questioning, I'm going to try to get back to public comment. So if you haven't already submitted a card, I still have this many cards, so I won't get to any card that's submitted now. I mean, it's just, I don't see how we get to that today. But has any city, host city, ever withdrawn? And if so, what happens?
Denver was the host city for the 76 Winter Games, and they did withdraw. We understand they withdrew a few years into the contract, and then the games were remade, if you will, in Innsbruck in Austria.
So is there a fine, a penalty, or anything like that?
At that time,
and I guess let me just tell you where I'm going instead of playing around. If something out of the ordinary were to happen, is there a way for us to acquire additional insurance or something, work out an agreement with the United States Olympic Committee or something to cover us? Because to me, that's the one question. I just want to make sure we're thinking about that and their options. So if you could share those with us.
Well, we have a very substantial budget for insurance, and we've already explored expanding the insurance protection. We've discussed that with city representatives, and we actually are quite confident that the insurance packages we'll be able to negotiate for 28 are substantially better than for 24. This is where the additional time helps us, because we can buy the insurance today for events that are farther in the future than 24 represented. So I think we'll have better insurance. We also believe that the city is protected. The IOC has done what it can with a legal document to give itself certain rights, but we actually believe the city is going to have flexibility in the event of some unforeseen problem and the insurance will help us manage through that. Jim or Sharon may want to comment too.
So the draft MOU that we're working on right now will actually have a specific provision that will require the purchase of an insurance policy precisely to address the issue you have raised. We will be reporting back to you next week with that MOU. There are other provisions that we would like to include in the MOU that provide further protection for the city against any additional financial liability. We talked about a few of those today, which was raising the contingency account that we discussed, additional reporting that would require your approval to use any of that contingency for any other purpose. So there are a number of other things that we will be including in that updated MOU.
Okay.
Let me just offer a couple of practical observations, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
One, in prior host city contracts, there was something called a liquidated damages clause, which means that automatically, if you breach the contract, there was a number of millions and millions of dollars in penalties, if you will, or in damages. This host committee contract does not contain those positions, so it'd be a question of what damages to the IOC recovered, assuming you're assuming that we would be treated as if we breached the contract, Mr. Chairman. If it's soon now, they have 11 years. Other bidders have expressed interest in 2028. I don't see how, early on at least, there would be any significant damage. And the IOC has never sued anybody, including Denver, for their withdrawal.
That's good to know. Now, when I walked in this morning, before Mr. Krikorian said hello to me, he was asking questions were related to the state's guarantee. So I think I want to defer to you or call on you so that we can follow up on the state's commitment for the $250 million.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I guess one of the most significant changes to the overall risk allocation on the negative side of going to 2028 would be that for the 2024 bid, we have the certainty of the second $250 million risk being taken up by the state, pursuant to the state legislation. And as you've alluded to in the presentation, it won't be possible for the legislature. Well, I shouldn't assume that. I'll come back to that for a moment. But as of now, the legislature has not amended the previous legislation to apply that $250 million to the 28 Olympics. So if we were to go forward with the host city contract, if we were to be approved in Lima, there is a chance that the legislature will not have acted by that time. So I guess I'd want to cover a couple of points. First, it would be helpful, I think, for us to have assurance from the governor's office and the leaders of the legislature that they do intend to proceed with at least the debate in the legislature about this issue. I think those of us who are, most of us here who are former legislators know that if they are committed to doing so, they could act very expeditiously and could, in fact, even get legislation completed by the 28 Olympics. I think the deadline for legislation is September 15th. So they could act with, great dispatch in amending the previous legislation. But even if that were not possible, I would hope that we would get strong expressions of support from the leaders of the legislature on both sides of the aisle and the governor. I have no doubt, practically speaking, that they will be eager to do so, because we should remember, as we consider this potential risk, that the Assembly passed this by a 71-6 vote. The Senate passed this by a 36-1 vote. This is not controversial in the legislature. It's more a matter of making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before we make our major commitment of an additional $250 million of risk. So do you anticipate that perhaps by next week, when we consider this again, that we will have some commitment from those leaders that they will be bringing this forward? Ideally, in my view, before Lima, but if not, with a commitment to doing so. And then if they can't do it by Lima, I guess I would like to flesh out with the city attorney a little bit more. Are there any kinds of options that we would have to take up if, for some unforeseen reason, the state legislature decides to take a pass on 28? So I don't see that as being a likelihood, but again, it is a risk. It's a significant risk element that we have to take into account. So, Casey.
So I've spoken to both the pro tem and the speaker personally in the last week. They have both said no problem. We look forward to it. They were actually the authors of the bill, so leadership is clearly supportive. Their response was no problem. What else do you need from us? So they're very supportive. I would urge all of you to connect with them and affirm that for yourselves. And we will do this as expeditiously as possible within their calendar. But we don't anticipate any challenges either.
Okay. And if you spoke, Jim, about the acceptability of the risk, we are taking on some added risk with regard to the state guarantee, because it could be that this doesn't. It could be that they don't act. It could be that they failed to act. It could be that some controversy erupts in the legislature that didn't happen last time. Who knows? Crazy things happen in the legislature since we all left. So it could be that the wheels could come off of that. I don't think it's likely, but it could be. So how does our attorney view that risk, and what might be our options to deal with it?
Well, based on what Mr. Wasserman said, I think, and Gene said as well, they have high confidence that, in fact, this legislation will be enacted. But you're right, Mr. Krikorian. If it were not to be, that would eliminate that second-tier blanket that we've been relying on with respect to the 2024 bid. I don't know what you can do legally, because the only way to protect ourselves would be to change the host city contract. And I don't believe, from everything I've heard, the IOC is willing to do that.
So, but just to be clear on that point, regardless of what the council does, if we approve unanimously, the city's obligation with regard to the IOC commences upon the execution of the host city contract. Is that right?
Yes, in theory.
Oh,
I'm not sure there's going to be any liability that early.
Well, right, but certainly not before that.
No,
we'd have no obligation whatever to the IOC or anyone else until a host city contract is in fact signed and approved by the IOC in Lima.
I think that's correct, because it would not be signed by them yet.
Okay. I have other things, Mr. President, but on that topic.
Let me go.
Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing on that. Sorry, Mr. President. But the other thing is, and thank you, Mr. Wasserman, for your reference to the contingency increase. I think that's a very positive thing. It occurs to me that as we're talking to the legislature, perhaps we should discuss with them a similar increase because of the additional cost and cost of living.
We have and agree with that perspective.
Great. Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Cedillo, the Vice Chair.
Mr. Is this on?
Yep, you're good.
We're good? Okay, good morning, everybody. Let me say that I heard this interesting question the other day. I was at the opening, the announcement, and a reporter from The Guardian asked me, so what do the Olympics mean for Boyle Heights? I thought, wow, that's pretty specific, pretty nuanced, and I thought, oh, okay. So I thought about it, and I thought about my presence and my trip I took about 2 years ago. I was invited to speak at the UN on the question of immigration, of course. And then I went down to look at the Olympic Museum. And I marveled. I began to learn about the Olympic movement, how it brought sports into the daily lives of our nation. Sports was not something that was organized for our nation as a part of our daily life. It was brought to our nation as a result of the Olympic movement. Before that, people just got up and went to work or went to school and, did what they did. But sports was not integrated into the daily lives of our nation, and in many nations throughout the world. I thought, well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I didn't have an appreciation for it. So back to Boyle Heights, back to Stevenson Junior High School, back to what was then Laguna Park. The Olympics, for me, as a product of Boyle Heights, is really, in many respects, the reason I'm here today. And it's really the reason I've done and been successful in the things that I've been. Because I've always admired Olympic athletes. My uncles were great athletes from Barstow High School. They were all CIF. They lettered in every sport. They got scholarships to the University of California. And that's what motivated me as a kid. As an 8th grader, I ran cross country with a high school team from Salesian High School. I was trained by Brother Tom. As a 9th grader, I walked over to Laguna Park and signed up for the Pop Warner football. I was the fastest person around and one of the fastest young persons in the county. We won a championship. It motivated me at 5'6" to go to Roosevelt High School, a school with a great athletic tradition. Mike Garrett, athletic director from USC, All-American, Heisman Trophy winner. Many of SC's greatest players have come out of Roosevelt High School. Dodgers, no, he couldn't get me there. Many Dodgers, many great athletes. Walt Simon, the New York Nets, and so the guy asked me, and he said, so what's it mean for Boyle Heights? I said, well, look, it means that all these young boys and girls, and I emphasize girls as a grandfather of two young girls now, are going to have opportunities to participate in sports. It's very aspirational. And not everyone's going to be an Olympian. Although Paul Gonzalez, we're very proud of him. Although Oscar De La Hoya, we're very proud of him. But not everybody's going to bring home the gold from the games. But they will bring home the gold in life. Because they're going to learn how to set goals. They're going to learn how to work towards those goals. They're going to learn how to be teammates. And they're going to learn how to be winners in life. And that's what bringing the Olympics to Los Angeles is all about. This deal is better than the previous deal. It has money up front, and it makes an investment not just in youth, but in our future. And so when the guy asked me, what does it bring for Boyle Heights? I said, what it brings is our opportunity to participate like the rest of the world. It brings our opportunity for young boys from Boyle Heights to dream, to be aspirational, and to be champions. Someone said, well, so what do you think of the delay? I said, let me tell you something. Olympic gold doesn't spoil. And it will be as great in 2028, if not greater, than in 2024. It gives us opportunity to plan, to prepare. I'm just amazed at the incredible assets that the city has. I looked at the diagrams. I looked at the projections for UCLA. We really have an opportunity, as one young man said earlier, came up here and spoke about wanting to showcase this city. And I think that is a great opportunity for us to build. Now, are we concerned about displacement? Of course we are. Are we concerned about homelessness? Of course we are. Are we concerned about the high cost of living in the city of Los Angeles? Of course we are. But this is not to say that we're not going to continue to work on those problems. I have confidence, Mr. President. I have confidence with our plans that we will address and resolve those problems. I'm not in this business to come in second place. We're here to solve those problems, right? We're going to be Olympians in those efforts. But the Olympics give us an opportunity to set a plan and a program to do just that. And we will integrate that into our efforts to create greatness in the city and to create an opportunity to showcase the great city of Los Angeles and our country. So for that, Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you, the committee, and I thank your leadership.
Well said, Mr. Cedillo. I'd like to recognize Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to, first of all, say to all the Olympians in this room today, we tip our hat to all of you for your years of dedication to inspire all of us, Paralympians and Olympians. Your presence and your effort in this has continued to keep this dream alive, and I do believe that you will carry us across the finish line once again. So it's a great honor to be in the same room with all of you. And to the host committee, the work that you've done, thank you. The work that you've done over the last 2 years, it's been a great relationship that we've established. And it's given me a sense of strong confidence that the same team that led us to a very, very strong bid application for the 24 games will be even stronger for 28. I have no doubt about that. And let me also just say that 21 years ago, at this very moment, during these very times, was the Atlanta Olympics. 21 short years ago. I don't think 11 years from now is that far away at all. And anyone who is all grown up looks back and probably thinks to themselves, my gosh, Atlanta was 21 years ago? So I would argue that we can use this time as an advantage. And I'm very gratified to hear that all of the major points that you negotiated on our behalf carry forward for the next 4 years to host the games in 28. Now, the Olympic Games are not only aspirational, but they're inspirational. I have said this before, but the Olympic Games have played a very large role in my own personal life, just from an inspirational perspective. From the time that I stayed awake in bed listening to the Olympic theme in the Grenoble Winter Olympics, to Peggy Fleming's gold medal winning performance, to the Mexico City Summer Olympics, my mom would hold herself up in the living room watching television, and I was too young to stay up and watch the Olympics, but I would lay there and listen to this music. And I think the inspirational stories that the Olympic movement has had across this country and across this world speak for themselves. And I would argue that we as city leaders can be inspired to make sure that there are no cost overruns, to work with you to that effect, that there is a profit that will benefit Angelenos long after 2028. And really, I think that's the perspective I bring to this. And the questions I ask are not just metaphorical, they're literal, but the questions that we should ask ourselves is, how can Los Angeles benefit after 2028? What these Olympics can do in terms of helping us address the issues of the day, including homelessness, economic growth, our transportation needs. We know that we're on the cusp of incredible changes in transportation. What will the Olympics look like 11 years from now when we have the self-driving cars and we have our mass transit system built out even further? How will the aspirational goals of the Olympics inform and perhaps even monetize other innovations for transportation leading to the 28 games? Those are the kinds of thoughts and questions that I'm going to be asking as a member of this ad hoc committee and a member of the Los Angeles City Council. Now, one of the things that I'm very gratified to hear is that there will be the 6-month biannual check-ins leading up to 2028 with the City Council. So it is my understanding that we will continue to have the oversight. None of us sitting here will be on the City Council in 2028, but we want to make sure that our successors inherit the benefit of a really strong process leading to a very profitable 28 games. The only question I have at the moment, and then we're going to all deep dive into all the information that we just received and that is forthcoming in the next week. Just if you could go over one more time the uncertainties that we pretty much have no direct control over. And I know that includes the MOU, the tripartite agreement, and what the state, I think we all feel, will very likely do. What else is there in terms of, on the IOC's part, that the uncertainties that we really have no control over, so we can kind of anticipate some advocacy in those directions?
I just want to add one point of clarification on the tripartite agreement. That's
Sure.
That's really an agreement between Los Angeles, Paris, and the IOC to take advantage of planning 2 games at once to create more efficiencies opportunities. There's no economic obligation from that as a result. It's really a cooperation agreement is the way to think about it, just so you can frame it in your mind. The economic terms are all covered in the host city contract. We would argue that there are likely to be benefits derived from working together and planning two games at once in coordination with the IOC, but it's really just an agreement to do that as opposed to an obligation financially, positively or negatively.
Got it. And Casey, that tripartite agreement exists simply because of this unusual arrangement.
See, the only purpose is to sort of point out and describe areas of collaboration between two host cities, which is a unique opportunity.
Agreed.
The tripartite agreement is really for the IOC, and it's to give a bit of guidance to the cities as they have the opportunity to work together. The host city contract is completely done. So the host city contract requires that the city accept the obligations under the host city contract. And of course, it's subject to the IOC members voting to approve both Paris and Los Angeles for 24 and 28, which will take place on September 13th.
And let me add one thing, Mr. O'Farrell. It's not true that, quote, we have no control over the MOU. First, we've been negotiating very heavily in a very professional way from these great leaders of the LA 24, now 28 committee. We're very close.
I should
That's a negotiated
rephrase that uncertainty. I mean, the what isn't going to land in certainty before we vote to support the 28 bid. That I should have asked it in that way.
I'm not sure the MOU won't be done. I think it will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
It will be done. I think we expect it in
before the 18th.
I think it'll be done before
imminently.
Might be
okay.
Be done
Before
today.
you meet next Friday.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what are the other sort of things that we need to think about that at this moment we're not going to necessarily have control over? That's kind of where I'm getting at.
Councilmember, I think as you've discussed, Sacramento is on recess. They cannot consider legislation before August 18th. So that's one. The other is, as we've said, it is 4 more years. That's sort of inherently adds some risk. And the final one, as you know, we've done a very detailed deep dive into the budget so far that literally took months and months and then was reviewed by KPMG. That will be happening after the fact this time because it's moving so fast. But we still have an agreement with LA 28 that they will, in fact, at their expense, be bringing KPMG back to do that deep dive on the budget sometime in the next 18 months before they submit their final games plan to the IOC.
Thank you. So that lastly, Mr. Chair, our own budget validation will be forthcoming as well.
Yes.
Right. We're able to do that for 2024, but when will our own budget validation? When do we think?
Well, we anticipate, as Rich described, we've made a commitment to have KPMG review the budget within the next 18 months.
Okay, and that'll come back to us, and CLA,
Correct.
CAO, we'll put our
We'll
heads
have
together.
the same sort of report we had last time. KPMG will make sure they give you their view of a budget, which will be a budget for 2028, that will reflect all of the changes that were negotiated in the host city contract and all of the changes that come from having the games 4 years later.
And that should clearly state what we have control over and what we perhaps don't have much control over, but at least it will provide a window into opportunities that we can take advantage of to make the games even more financially
correct. And important to note, obviously, our obligations under the MOU remain in place, and our venue plan, which obviously drives the great majority of the cost, is unchanged from 24 to 28.
Thank you.
Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the team for extraordinary performance. Really an exciting example of collaboration, working together, and we appreciate the public-private aspects of the partnership. I'm really intrigued with this $180 million advance payment that the city is going to be receiving, and the commitment, I guess, that the committee is making, $160 million for local sports programming. Is that correct? And 2 questions around that. 1, is there any precedent for this occurring before? And 2, do we have an obligation to share with other municipalities, other organizations? What are we doing on that? Yes.
So important to note, the $180 million will allow us, so if we had won the games for 2024, important to note that there was no advance payment. And as with the IOC, they pay the host cities as they get paid by their broadcasters or the sponsors. Most of that, the great majority of that in the last 2 years as you get close to the game. So most organizing committees face serious cash flow challenges in the early years. So what the $180 million is entirely mitigating that for us for the first 5 years on an interest-free basis as an advance against future distributions. So that's a huge benefit to the OCOG and reduces significant borrowing costs and significant just operational
And
challenges.
they've never done that before with any organizing committee.
So they've never done that. Then the second piece is that all comes to the OCOG. Obviously, that's and we're your partner in that effort. And the $160 million is to fund programs through LA City Rec and Parks and provide universal access to those programs to the kids of Los Angeles.
It spells out LA City Rec and Parks.
LA City Rec and Park, correct.
Thank you.
You know, I'm going to go to the next member, but I think that we need to remember the relationship that we have with LA 84 and the success that the Amateur Athletic Foundation has demonstrated over all of these years. So I would hope we look at a way to incorporate them into this advanced money. They have a proven track record, and to me, we would be, if we didn't take advantage of something that's already in place, that has already demonstrated its ability to do great things in our communities. I know my community, Mr. Price's, Mr. Cedillo, and I could go on and on. So I do want to just add that in. I want to add that on the record. So as we begin to look at this, I want to make sure that they are incorporated, not out.
Yeah.
Is that doable?
Absolutely, sir.
All right. Bob, Mr. Blue? No. Okay.
That being able to utilize that structure in some part is going to have some benefit. We know that there are going to be lots of additional opportunities to fund and to supervise these funds. So we just want to make sure that
Great.
we're taking advantage of the best we can. Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. President. Thank you all for the presentation. I should say when I first heard or started reading about the 2028, I was really disappointed because I've made no secret I'm excited about the Olympics. As I've said before, you know, I've competed in the 76, the 84, and the 92 Olympics. I was competing for tickets, not in any particular event, but I got to be at all those events, and it was great. And I know, and you know, all of the things that we've talked about in terms of what this can bring to the city of Los Angeles, I just wanted to happen soon. But then I also started thinking, you know, patience may be difficult. Anticipation, patience sometimes. What's the famous quote about patience being difficult, but that just makes the fruit that much sweeter in the end. And this anticipation for these next 11 years also, and we talked about this on the phone. I got most of my questions answered of a series of phone calls, but it provides us a real possibility for good things that we couldn't even imagine in terms of monetizing some of that time into benefits for the city, in terms of the advance of the 160 or the 180 million, but 160 potentially going to city programs. I also want to echo, I am concerned about the state backstop. I'm not concerned about it. I have confidence in our legislators, but I just want to get that done as fast as possible and see it upgraded to the 270. And then just a quick question. You mentioned the venues are already decided. In the previous conversations, we talked about there may be some flexibility, and I want to sort of re-ask that question because particularly if we're going to 2028, I fully expect there to be some good venues in the West San Fernando Valley by 2028, and I want them to have the opportunity to potentially be part of this.
So we've said consistently that if new venues become available in the interim, obviously it's going to be part of our evaluation going forward, but just for the certainty and your peace of mind from a cost perspective, which is the short-term consideration, that the plan remains unchanged. The entirety of our plan, it's important to note that we delivered to the IOC that you reviewed, was based only on what exists today, whether that's transportation infrastructure, logistical infrastructure or sports venues. We didn't want to do anything prospective or dependent on potential future developments, even potential funding or development of transportation that's already funded through Measure M. This is only about what exists today, and we think that's the most conservative approach. But obviously, our goal will be to make the plan better when opportunity arises.
And yet, council members, you know, you negotiated in your MOU, while we expect there'll be changes in 11 years, even in 7 years, you actually have approval rights for those changes. So that you may be arguing for your West Valley, sir, but you'll have to get the rest of your council colleagues to support that.
Kind of knew the answer, but I wanted to put that out there both for an aspirational purposes as well as we consider different venues in different parts of the city. So.
We would remind all the members of the council and the committee that one of the great features of our plan is that we actually anticipate having events and having a sports park in the Valley. And that was not present. There was no Valley activity in the 1984 Olympic Games. So it's something we're very proud of, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your leadership. And I was quite frankly concerned with Mr. Bach's quote back in June when he clearly said that I don't think you need to reward somebody if you give somebody a present. But I don't know if he had a change of heart or what's unfolded in the last 2 months. Clearly, I see a sweetheart deal before us that we cannot pass up, especially with the $180 million that's going to be dumped into our youth programs. How quickly can we see that $180 million into our youth programs in the city?
So the 180, we've agreed to a payment schedule of $9 million a quarter starting as soon as we've formed the OCOG or January 1st of 18. So $9 million a quarter for 20 quarters. That will be coming to the OCOG to finance the operations.
And I, too, share the concern with the state legislation that was passed on the $250 million backstop. But in your discussion, again, with the governor, the pro tem, and the speaker, there's an appetite to amend the legislation when they come back into session.
Not just an appetite. The way they spoke about it with me was they assumed they would be doing it, and it was a foregone conclusion that would be happening. So,
and lastly, Mr. Chair, because I know we have to get to council, I believe in waiting the additional 4 years, this city is going to be a better city than 24. A city that's going to have a world-class airport, a world-class transportation system. The venues will remain standing stronger than ever. And I believe that, I know there are skeptics that say we cannot wait another 4 years. The risks outweigh the skepticism that's out there today. So I'm looking forward to coming back before this committee in addressing some of the MOU concerns and moving forward to bring the games to Los Angeles in 2028. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino. I'm going to call on Mr. Krikorian for some, cleanup issues.
Thank you. Krikorian. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you all again for the presentation. We worked very hard, this council, the mayor's office, and LA 24 in trying to ensure that there were strong taxpayer guarantees for the last proposal. And I think we succeeded in doing that. We very much clearly succeeded in doing it since it earned a unanimous vote in the City Council and in this committee. Among those guarantees were the fact that we would have significant board membership on the OCOG and that there would be robust insurance program. There were a number of the contingency that was changed after consideration. So we have a number of provisions to reduce the risk to taxpayers in the 24 proposal. And I just want to, on a blanket statement, I just wanted to hear that all of those guarantees will again be carried forward into the MOU for 28.
Yes, sir, 100%.
Okay. So, and similarly then to that, the candidature commitments that would be made by the USOC or others, are there any changes in any of the candidature commitments that relate to the finances between 28 and 24?
Only those reflected in the host city contract.
Yeah. So the appendices to the host city contract include a lot of operational requirements. Presumably those that relate to the city are the same in 28 as they were in 24.
Correct.
Okay. So as I see this, practically speaking, there is some risk in waiting an additional 4 years because of potential changes in venues, changes in the type of events that might take place. Some of the existing venues that we have will be older. But I know that you've already thought those through, so if you could just address that first.
So first on the sports program, there's two things. One, the sports program for 2028 would not be finalized till 2021 after Tokyo's games. And secondly, there are protections in the host city contract that we, and therefore you, have approval over any changes to that sports program if they're material, and we choose to accept them, the cost increase is to be paid by the IOC. So we're protected for any sports programs. And I would tell you one of the great things about using private venues that operate today to monetize those investments is it's the burden on the private operators to maintain those venues at the highest possible standard to create the most possible opportunity for them. So I would tell you one of the great takeaways from the Evaluation Commission when they visit a place like the Forum, when they visit a place like the Coliseum, was how spectacularly they are maintained and kept up for venues that are 100 or 50 years old. And we're pretty confident that USC and UCLA and the Staples Center and the new Rams and Chargers Stadium and the city venues will still be here in 2028 and will be maintained at the highest possible level because it's in their interest to be maintained at the highest possible level for their day-to-day use, not for the Olympic Games.
And even if, God forbid, they weren't, the city still retains a role within the OCOG with regard to venue selection, any changes in venues, and moving venues outside of the city and so forth. We satisfied ourselves with regard to 24. All of those guarantees remain in place for 28.
Correct.
Okay, great. There's increased insurance coverage that Gene mentioned. That is a stronger case for the taxpayers for 28. There is a likelihood of increased revenues with the 28 games because of extended sponsorship periods and so forth, right? And that will be built into the budget. That is a protection for taxpayers as well. As Mr. Buscaino and I think others mentioned, we have a greater likelihood of we have greater certainty with regard to our physical infrastructure in the city, knowing that our transportation system will be more likely to be completed by 28 than, even though I was confident we'd make it by 24. We have a greater opportunity with that 4-year extra cushion. All of the guarantees that we worked so hard to achieve in the MOU for 2024 remain in place. So it seems to me, from everything that I've seen, that with the stronger likelihood of increased revenues, with the increased commitment by the IOC, the fact that we're realizing $2 billion in commitments instead of 1.7 from the IOC, the increase in the contingency, $200 million more in estimated international sponsorships, all of those positive financial factors seem to me to outweigh the likelihood that there's any additional risk in these 4 years, in these added 4 years. So I'll be looking forward to hearing, a little bit further assurance from our friends in the state legislature before we take a final vote on this. But this seems to me a very clear-cut case, and I, am the one that has to pick up the pieces in budget and finance on this if it goes wrong. But I think to me it's very clear that this is a better package for the people of Los Angeles, and it's a safer package for the taxpayers and budget of Los Angeles than we had in 2024, and that was a great package. So, Mr. President, I am very, very positive about the proposal that's before us, and I look forward to hearing more when we act next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fine. So, to the city clerk, we gave you some instructions. You want to read those into the record?
Yes. The instruction or recommendation number 1, instruct the chief legislative analyst and the city administrative officer and request the city attorney to report with a revised memorandum of understanding, the tripartite agreement, and the guarantees. Recommendation number 2, instruct the Chief Legislative Analyst to prepare a resolution seeking state funding support for the 2028 Games, consistent with the support provided for the 2024 Games bid. Recommendation number 3, instruct the Chief Legislative Analyst to prepare a recommendation to change the committee name to the Ad Hoc Committee on the 2028 Olympic Games.
Thank you. Now, where's our city attorney? Streff? Where is it? We have so many people who came from all over the city to give their input on this issue. So I want to see if I can legally do this. We have 10 members here. I would like to convene the council, but afford the individuals the opportunity to speak at the beginning of council, those that had cards, because they wanted to speak at this.
So I suggest that we consider it part of general public comment, and they may speak on the Olympics in that capacity.
Okay, so for those of you that came, if you give me like 2 minutes, we'll kind of work this around, and then I will go back to the list of cards that I got earlier, and hopefully we can accommodate everybody. I do want to thank our city people. I want to thank LA 2028. Got to get used to saying that. Again, Casey, members has indicated that his staff and Gene, they'll be available for questions all week. So we anticipate that we will see you next Friday. We will be at City Hall. So thank you. So with that said, members, let's move to our seats. And if I can get the clerk here so we can call the roll.